present our first speakers, Alice Mons-Rasbay. She's a director of research and knowledge exchange in the Department of Visual Art at Middlesex University. She has produced film, books, and exhibitions in response to the ways in which live art or ephemeral works are recorded and understood through documentation. Our art practice inform teaching and workshops, and how artists collaborate. She has a great number of publications. She contributed to a breaking book on art line on video tape to exposing performance at Tate in London in 2003. She participates in the book of our guests to Manuel Vals's book on our exposures. She curated several exhibitions and books, in particular the live art on camera in 2007, about what she will rethink now, and she will speak about this experience. I'll give you the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here. It's really nice how intimate it is in the space, and the fact that it's easy to see everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
That's brilliant. So I'm going to be looking backwards to a project which was actually many years' work, but manifested itself in an exhibition publication in 2007 and 2008. Is that okay? Yes, getting closer and closer. Yeah. And in response to the subjects of the conference, I decided it's also interesting to look at my archive in response to this work. So this work took place in the archives of artists and photographers who are very well known in the field of live art and performance. My talk will be reflecting on that area of work, but also looking at what resonance does it have in the present, perhaps what resonance it has here today in the subjects of this conference. So just a tiny bit about me. I come from a background as a practitioner, so as an artist rather than studying art history. And I was saying to a colleague, I always feel a little bit like the country vet on the panel of doctors and professors. So bear with me, and I will be speaking from notes, but also referring back to some of the texts which are interviews with artists and photographers from quite some time ago. I think a way of describing what I do is sort of looking for subjects which seem like almost like glitches, things that are hidden. So perhaps we know the work of the artist picture, Helena Putai, artist on the which is on the back of the book, and we have the live photography team on the right hand side, recording the work. So I would say for a long time I felt eclipsed that kind of production of image and how the photographers worked, and that really fascinated me. So I guess that I'm looking for subjects that I would say are kind of out of frame. They're ones which are under the surface, perhaps. They're missing from the art historical map in what I can access. Although the map keeps changing, and this now very much feels anchored in the time it was done, which is 2007. So I'm going to move on. My first engagement really with this as a subject came through looking at the work of Gina Fan. At the time, I didn't really know anything about her. The photograph on the left hung on my studio wall, so it was an image that I had cut from somewhere and I was fascinated by, and I couldn't really quite work out the reasons for my fascination. But with time, I would say the things that I was drawn to were the fact that I can see it's an image which is live. However, I can also have the sense that it's taken in a very controlled way by the photographer, with photographic lighting, with a sort of movement between the artist and the audience to get the image. And that really fascinated me. So I guess that I was drawn to trying to work out what's going on in this image, burrowing into the image through a fascination at that time with performance camera, sort of inaccurately slotting Gina Pan into a trajectory between Claude Cahun and Cindy Sherman, when actually she was somebody who was renowned in her lifetime. She lived from 1939 to 1990. She was known for what were termed high-risk actions, often ones where she put her body at risk. She was very much closed down, I feel, throughout history as the woman who cut herself, because within incredibly complex actions, there would likely be a moment where a cut into the skin was made, but it would be one moment in many hours, actually, of an action. So it took me a long time through getting fascinated in these images and with the fact that there was not really so much at that time written about Gina Pan, to realise that what I should do is get in touch with the photographer and to try and ask the photographer about how did it come to be that these images were made. And again, that took some kind of detective work to find the photographer Françoise Masson, who was living in the countryside in France and had been somewhat sort of cut out of the picture. Her name was present in the time when these images were first published, but it went out of view. The more I looked at the images, the more extraordinary I thought they were, because they were taken with colour, which would have been incredibly difficult in a live action. And they were taken with Françoise moving her lights around between the artist and the audience. And then I also became exposed to the fact that Gina Pan was revolutionary in her pre-thinking of images. She made drawings for the action, that the drawings were then given to the photographer. And the images that Françoise Masson took were then part of what Gina Pan made after the action, which was called Constat, which is a montage of many of these photographs. So my moving, I forwards at that time went in sort of two directions. On the one hand, I did a book which was an interview with Françoise Masson, which is the one on the left. And on the other hand, I was invited to write for the catalogue and be in dialogue with curator Adrian George on an exhibition that he was curating for Tate Liverpool called Art Lies and Videotape, Exposing Performance. For me, the two books are good there as prompts to recognise that there seem to be two different directions going on here. One for me was when I look at the title Art Lies and Videotape, Exposing Performance, I'm uncomfortable with it, because I feel I'm not in this for wanting to expose lies. I'm in it for wanting to know how things came to be made, and also how images evoke a sense of something live. So my book, the one with Françoise Masson, was really a long interview with her about her career in commercial photography, the incredible chance that she should meet she should meet Gina Pan through being sent on an assignment by a magazine to do reportage. But within Art Lies and Videotape, I was allowed to suggest photographers who might be interesting to include. And I suggested Uta Plothouse, who had recorded Joseph Beuys. Joseph Beuys gives me a great way in of talking about image and how photography impacts how we read, something that happened in the past, performance, ephemeral events. We see here an image which is taken after Joseph Beuys' death. And we see one which was privileged in his lifetime, which is by the photographer Lisa Blockhouse. And I think that we know during Boyce's lifetime, his work through black and white photographs, often where they're a little bit out of focus, they're atmospheric, they have a narrow depth of field. There's another photographer very famous in relation to Joseph Boyce's work, Caroline Tisdale, who I initially interviewed, but she said, really, you should see Lisa Blockhouse, because it's Lisa Blockhouse who came up with the styling of Boyce. So here is an image by Lisa Blockhouse, which gives you a sense of that. And I think that my finding was, my excitement actually around this was that Lisa Blockhouse kind of continued the work of the live event in the darkroom. I asked her, how did you know to be on the bank? So the caption, in case you can't see it, is it comes from Lisa Blockhouse rather than Boyce. It says, crossing the line, return to the Academy of Art Festival, in which Joseph Boyce was transported across the Rhine in an action by one of his students, Anatole Hetzfield, who handcrafted the boat from wood. So I asked her to Blockhouse, how did you know to be on the banks to take the photo? And she said, oh, it was telepathy. That's how we communicated. So I'm coming back to Gina Pan and Escalade. So this is a piece that I talked with Françoise Masson about at length. This is a piece which I have different renditions of. So I have Gina Pan's rendition of what was the action. Then I have Françoise Masson's memory of what was the action. There was no audience present, so this was just made in Gina Pan's studio. And it's one that sort of perhaps indicates towards what I was talking about with Constance, which is that Gina Pan made montages of photographs as a result of her photo documentation. But at this point, that was kind of invested through contact prints. So I'm going to just very quickly read. This is what Gina Pan, the artist you can see pictured, wrote about this action. She said, in April 1971, I performed an action in my studio called Ascent. There was an iron ladder with sharp protrusions on each step, and I climbed up and down barefoot about 30 times until I reached my limits of endurance. My hands and feet were bleeding quite profusely. I chose my studio as the setting because I wanted to emphasize the fact that the artists, as well as man's relationships, are perverted in their rush to achieve a goal, in the frenzy to get ahead. There isn't mutual respect or trust, therefore every gesture itself is inhuman, and people's sensibilities are automatically anesthetized. They're no longer aware of the effects of their actions. Here I wanted to experience an ascent which wasn't anesthetized, where I would undergo a great deal of suffering and pain. This action, Gina Pan also makes connection to the escalation of the Vietnam War, which was happening at the same time. So I'm flipping from Gina Pan talking in the 70s to Françoise Masson talking with me around 2003. She said, quite soon after taking sculpture photographs for Gina, she invited me to her studio to take photographs of this particular action, L'Escalade. You have to picture that I came to the work directly from commercial photography, from shooting for magazines, fashion and architecture, an appointment within a week of entirely different sorts of work. This was a piece she made without an audience, essentially for the camera. I took photographs as Gina climbed up and down this ladder-like structure she'd made. The sharpened edges on the rungs dug into her bare feet and hands. I remember being shocked by her persistence with the work, her moving up and down the structure many times, and then the thump of her body onto the studio floor. I remember her panting and being exhausted by the work, but going on and on. I told her to stop, but she would be hurt. I don't remember her actually cutting herself on the structure. And to be sure, I looked again at the photographs and I don't see any blood. So I think what happens in the kind of the generation of aversion of a piece. Perhaps in Gina Pan's memory, it was something that cut into her feet and produced blood. The photographs and Francoise's memory of it was it didn't. Maybe it doesn't matter, but it just is quite curious how one version gets into art history and it's repeated and repeated. So certainly Gina Pan, I feel, is wrongly framed as this artist who it was all about was cut, that cut into her skin. My recent collaborator, Stephanie Seibold, who is a German artist based in Vienna, has been remaking some of these pieces. And she said in reading this work, she wondered why does no one make any reference to the roses, the rose that's carried in from Gina Pan's mouth. But she finds out surely that's some message also about, like in Germany, the idea of someone climbing up outside, carrying a rose as a gesture of love. And so my feeling looking back on this research is that it kind of drew to light things that perhaps have been almost not seen anymore because of one version eclipsing everything else. Here we see Francoise Masson in action with Gina Pan. Gina Pan used the photos like this in the articulation of the work, so this was a published photo. She wrote very candidly about her approach to photography and the fact that the audience shouldn't be bothered about not being able to see the work of the photographer going to block the view because they would have the images later and that is how it would be received. So within the trajectory, if you look at that work, she's looking down onto Gina Pan was taking these cover photos. Here are two which are in circulations, documentation piece. In parallel to our conversation, Francoise Masson was very kind of actively wanting to also look at commercial photography and suggest that things come together and things go away from each other, but nothing is sort of really in its individual box. And she said, well, I remember with this model learning from Gina Pan to ask the model to bite, and that this would bring attention to the face. So these things really interested me in looking through the archive with Francoise, as did the light sense, because I think they really show this incredible level of control that Gina Pan was after in terms of getting the action. The action would never be repeated. It would only happen live in front of the audience. After the action, Gina Pan would come back to Francoise's studio and she would be photographed with the scars that came out of the actions. But she also, Francoise said, was so playful and excited to use the props that Francoise had in the studio, like this blue backdrop is one that's used for filming architectural models. So these sort of images then go out into art history and out into the world. And this particular one, I think, is incredibly well known through being the cover of the book, The Body is Language. Body art and performance, the body is language. Okay, coming back now briefly, I'm going to just pick out a few examples from live art on camera. Live art on camera was focused on showing well-known performance photos in the context of the photographer's archive. So shifting away from the artist's archive, it was sort of to see, well, what was happening in parallel. And quite often things came to light that were sort of known in the time of making, but have been very forgotten. So within the mix, then Adrian Piper was an artist I reached out to say I'm really fascinated by the photos that exist of her works, Catalysis 3 and Catalysis 4, which were photographed by Rosemary Mayer. And again, I'm going to read a little bit from Adrian Piper and from Rosemary Mayer, her photographer. So of these pieces, Adrian Piper writes, the immediacy of the artist's presence as artwork catalysis confronts the viewer with a broader, more powerful, and more ambiguous situation than discrete forms or objects. For example, Catalysis 4 before, in which I dressed very conservatively, but stuffed a large white bath towel into the sides of my mouth until my cheeks bulged to about twice their normal size, letting the rest of it hang down my front, and riding in the bus, subway, and Empire State Building elevator. In Catalysis 3, which is the other one here, in which I painted a set of clothing with sticky white paint with a sign attached saying wet paint, then went shopping at Macy's for some gloves and sunglasses. I contacted Adrian Piper, and she was pleased that I should make contact with Rosemary Mayer. I think that she valued Rosemary Mayer as an amazing artist in her own right, and somebody who had been incredibly neglected, but is right now having a renaissance. So a huge show is about to open in Britain on Rosemary Mayer. Rosemary Mayer said of making this work or taking these photos, Adrian and I were art school friends. When she began doing performance, I offered to photograph as a friend helping a friend. The New York City streets were very different in the 70s than they are today. The streets were truly mean and the atmosphere taut. When Adrian performed, people stared either with stiff blank faces or open hostility. I think today New Yorkers would simply smile and not ask questions. Because of this atmosphere, we must have chosen the best shots. I suspect Adrian had the negatives and contact sheets. And at the time, Rosemary Mayer was writing about the subjects of performance and experience. So she was writing about the kind of boundaries between this kind of work that was being made by Adrian Piper, Lisa Punchy, and others, that took on an everyday kind of context, albeit with a gesture that's anything like that. She said after this, though it's hard to conceive of today, in 72 there was a strong prejudice in the art world towards the idea that real life should influence art. Since I knew Adrian and Vito well, I could see clear connections between their work and their life experience as I wrote. I'm just going to briefly show you then. These are the works of Rosemary Mayer, the photographer, who had her own practice in her own right. Of these, she said, Snow People, which you see actually in this one, Snow People, followed balloon works, which were evanescent works for lost individuals. Nothing was left of even the places they once inhabited. I often visited my sister, the poet Bernadette Mayer, who had been living in their house, and so on. But they were made as kind of what she called temporary monuments. I'm going to speed up to finish. Another pairing was the work of Anna Mengetta that was photographed by Hans Breder. Anna Mengetta was a student of Hans Breder, but they were also in a relationship. So he was teaching her as part of the intermediate program, not only in regard to making the works. The work you see here was made on a student trip to Mexico, with students hiding in the bushes to take care of the guards didn't survive. And to praise Hans Breder, he would say, well, once she's got the flowers on her, that is the work, but she leaves it open to me as a photographer of what I should do. And he'd take 36 slides, also with the idea that slides, color slides, could be a time-based rendition of the work. He says the issue with that is since her very premature death, this makes 36 pieces on the market, where it was really one piece, so 36 versions of one piece. Finally, a piece that she made on the top of a hotel room. I'm going to read this and then that's me done. Of this, so Hans Breder says, I knew what Anna wanted by the time she was making the work, and she gave me a free hand. We never planned it. I can't imagine that. The piece on the rooftop of Hotel Principal in Mexico, where we were staying in 1973, is this one. Earlier, we'd gone to the butcher, got blood, got a cow's heart, back at the hotel, she ripped off the bed sheets, we went on the roof, she lay down naked, I arranged the sheet over the body, poured the blood over her, placed the beef heart and took the photographs. Okay, from the moment she lays down, it's all in my hands. Where do I place the beef heart? She said, on my chest, that's relatively vague. The final image is an image made immediately after that piece where Anna Mangetta models the Hans Braver. So this is a Hans Braver work where she, look closely, then you see the trace of the blood from the earlier piece. As a conclusion, I say, looking back through my archive, the thing that I feel most caught up with is how networks of people, artists, photographers, critics, people like you in the room here, are part of we're fused together in some ways, so that when one starts to investigate the photographs of performance, one inevitably comes to writings of others, comes to presentations of others again. And within my own archive, that's the thing that really sort of comes to mind most, is this kind of incredible, what seems like chance that can't be crossovers between the contexts that apparently should have gone together.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. We're thinking of your archives and needs put together images with memories, memories of art together to recreate the documentation. Thank you very much. Technical. I'm going now to present our next speaker, Session1, who is a PhD student in digital humanities, performing arts and media technology at the University of Genoa. And since 2019 has been responsible for the audio theatre archive in Oslo, Denmark. He graduated in modern literature and performing arts at the University of Genoa. Is one of the founders of Session1, the theatre, the University Theatre of Denmark, for which he was a producer until April 2019. And today, this reflections about the Flower for Sergei performance as a remediate graphic archive. Bring another aspect of this, the reusing of the archive. Please, the floor. And you can presentation. Yes, I will go through the performance. That was a performance that had a very long process, lasted from the end of 2017 until the 2020 when it had its premiere the 4th September 2020. It's a performance
dedicated to solar data that was an all-India task force and was Roberta Carreri's outbound who died in 2010. Of course, the performance system by Roberta Carreri that asked them very good that by video like and safe design that is Stefano Di Mullo. Looking at this performance, I try to point out three different questions. How the photo selection and their, let's say, remediation, their digital elaboration affected the graphic process. How this presentation, this live presentation of photo affected the spectator perception, and if we can consider a kind of performance that is remediated for that outcome. So the first, I approached the first two questions through a comparative analysis. So I went to study the empirical source, thanks to the work diary of Roberta, and I took some impression from some open rehearsals that, so I took some impression from an external point of view, also when the process were going on. And I, of course, I used the reviews published in letter journals and several magazines. Then I tried to compare this kind of source with theories, performance and media theories, concept of liveness, concept of mediaturgy, and technical understanding here present. I think this performance can be located across the period theorized at the end of the 90s by Volter and Glasins about remediation, so immediacy, hyper-immediacy, and remediation. In order to answer the third question, so how and if, and yes, if we can consider a kind of performance like our remediation for graphic archive, I use an epistemological approach, looking at the destabilization of the archival place by Derrida, looking at the notion of archive in FOCO, in knowledge organization, and I try to understand which was the gap between the formal logic and the piece memory, and then I use the document moment notion by Jacques Delors. I think liveness in this performance is used as a necessity because it departs from a necessity by the actress. The actress in the program was I don't want order to be forgotten. And in the trailer of the performance, she gave an interview in which she said that through the photos and through the remediation of the photos, because the photos were given movement, she felt like they are two on stage. And according to this tone, I think this kind of liveness is a necessity. So the liveness used as a necessity, but in examining the performance, I think we have to be aware that there is also an observer, a spectator. So we have to look at the liveness as an experience of the observer and as a quantitative effect on the observer. While they were, so Roberta Carreri that was the director and the actress in the performance, and Stefano Budo, which was the video designer, they went through the creative process. I think they approached it with the mediaturgical point of view. It means that the media, that was like a bidirectional influence between the media, the photo, and the design, and the gesture, the performance, the interaction between the performer and the screen, because the photos remediated in motion were projected on a 5 or 8 meter screen. And these, of course, as Anna Maria Montoya stated in the book published in 2011, these technologies on stage were used with two kinds of impact: appropriation in one side and entertainment on the other side. In fact, here you can see an example. On the left side on the screen, you can see the original photo, how it's impacting the outcome. is kept in a traditional way, is kept in what Orlando defines documentary category. So something the traditional relation between the performance and its documentation. On the right side of the screen, you can see that there is also, even if it's only a picture, there is a kind of relation between the photo and the performer. So the performer uses the digital support interactively and use it to tell a story. But at the same time, it's strange because the photos are not, and what's the decision during the process, the photos are not sized and proportionate with the body of the actor. And even if we look at that as photos, they are not photos because they are emotional, they are something else. So there is this kind of duality between appropriation on one side and infringement on the other. I think in some way we can talk about the logic of hypermediacy, because what was decided by the actors during the process was to remove the subject of the photo, in this case order, and put it out of the context and put it on a screen and put it in motion, because in this way the gesture of the photo and the gesture of the actor, in this way the mourning of the actors, the sadness of the actors, would touch the universal, the positive imagination. And why is this hypermediacy? Because it's not an emphatisation of the photos, but it's an emphatisation of the process. It's an emphatisation of the performative act. And Chiara Fulvi, which is a video maker, so we can say that she has an educated base in looking at a performance. I think in a letter that she wrote to Roberta Carelli about the process, she was able to understand that even if the movement of the photos is something hidden, it's something that is not completely done, it's something that is only sighted, is a movement to the left, but only sighted, can be perceived, and at the same time, what cannot be perceived is the technical artifice between the photo and the photographic animation. So between the static element that is the photo and the video design. What this kind of duality, what was obtained, what was the observer perception? Looking at the reviews published on theater magazines, and looking mostly to these the two centers that I cited, Sandal and Constal, that are two Norwegian theater critics. They treat the photos and they treat Torger as a character. So they treat this artifice, the video elaboration, as a character. Because, for example, Constal says Torger arrives putting a large locking doors. In the open scene, there is Torger in this 5/8 meter screen pulling a nose. It doesn't say the image of Torger, it says Torger. So there is this kind of transparent immediacy because the video design is a character, is a character co-participating in the performance, and at the same time, the user, in this case the observer, in this case the spectator, doesn't confront, doesn't do comparison between the different videos. It looks at the video design as a character, at the performance as a totality. It doesn't say any image of thought, it's a thought. So there is a subject. And this is why I think this is transparent immediacy, because the user is not aware that there are different things inside the performance, but for him there is no difference. You look at the performance in the totality of the performance. So how can I answer the first two results question I pointed out at the beginning? How the photo selection, the collaboration affected the process, and how affected the spectator perception. So necessity of lines, the methodological composition, and the graphic process oriented towards the hypermediacy logic that permitted to remediate the photography and give new movement the photography have provoked in the spectator something that we can call, I think, transparent immediate representation. It's an impression at the same time of absence and presence, at the same time of grief and joy, but it's what the spectator perceives without comparing, without the necessity of compare or distinguish the different media present in the performance. What about the second question that can we consider the performance as an archive? Of course, if we use the destabilization place of the archive, so I mean the destabilization and deconstructive theory by Derrida, the concept of archive theorized by Derrida, it launches different and infinite possibilities. And if we look at the Foucault theories, we can state that this performance has a system of intentionality and a system of functionality. It means that the actors, from the point of view of the actors, have the ability to organize their memory, to organize the documentation in a way that the performance works. But what about the spectator? Is the spectator can considered in this case as a user of the archive? My answer is no, because the spectator is like guided, it's like involved, it's co-participating in a flow that is managed by the actors. So maybe for the actor, from the actor point of view, if you consider a remediated photographic archive in which the gesture, in which occur the text, in which occur the remediated photo. But from the spectator point of view, I don't think we can consider it an actor. But I think we can consider it a document moment. Looking at the block theory, is a theory published in Italian in a note in Einaudi Institute in 1975. He tried to examine this concept of monument. Monument is something that is related with the Latin verb monere, that it means let people remind people something, and this performance remind people something. So remind the caller. I don't want to remember the Union said that the first intention of the actors was I don't want order to be forgotten. So this was one of the aims, to remind people. At the same time, why I think it can be integrated with the notion of monument with the notion of document, because it's a proof. This performance is like a proof of the existence, but also of the identity, of the artistical, personal, and professional identity of project data. So, what about the second conclusion? Can we consider this performance an archive? It, of course, it represents modality to perform the archive. And from the archive point of view, if we consider that there can be a way in which she organized her memory, she organized her knowledge, she organized also other documentation, we can consider an archive. But from the spectator point of view, I think we can consider it as a ephemeral document moment. Because photography were remediated through the video design, and they are a testimony. They are documents about further life. The interaction between the performer and the video design can be a monument, because it's this interaction lets people remind the life of progress and something, and the physical life of progress. Why is ephemeral? I think it's ephemeral because this kind of documentation does not reach. It exists only also with the actors in the stage. This kind of document moment notion applied to this performance, it exists only in the co-presence and in the co-participation of the actors and of the spectator. This is why it is ephemeral, because only with the co-participation, the user, in this case the observer, in this case the spectator, can perceive this kind of document model, this kind of testimony. Here are just some main reference I use in order to write on the paper, and thank you very much all for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation, stimulation, and for questions. You want to come here for questions and I don't know what. No, no side. No. Anyway, I just opened the floor to the question. If imagine that there are already some material to discuss, some suggestions, some stimulation remarks to do. I don't know if anyone wants to start with some questions. There's a question. I think.
I have a question for slide. Question is that you use
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Do you use the idea of producing strange type because for producing the principal remediation is from 2 meters. And if you think that performance the medium is very strange for them, it's not for me. Because if you search the second part of remediation, where using analyze a lot of media, if you search, you don't find theater of performance because the relationship of remediation is a relation by to media form. In my opinion, your presentation is very interesting, but it's substantial more if you use the concept of intermediate for my. I don't know if you think.
I think you are right. And also, if we look at McLuhan theories, the performance is not mentioned as a medium and as a media. I think I just take as a theories in order to understand which kind of relation could be put between the photography and the video design in this case. So the performance maybe was used as an object to put in relation these two kind of media. That's it. But thank you for your observation.
So much.
Thank you. No, I was just curious about the word of mind. I wonder if you could expand on what that who is being reminded or who is function of it. Yeah, I'm not sure remind or wrong. Remind or wrong. I'm not sure which.
Of the mind.
Yeah, just the word of mind. First.
When why I use this word for a particular application. When you go and when you see a monument on the streets, you see like a sculpture with a plaque, right? That because this monument tells you a story or something about something or someone that in a way must be reminded. And in this way, it's almost in this performance, it's almost the same. The photos, the video design, the interaction between the performer and the photos, it's something that lets you remind something else. In this case, was a necessity of the actress. She said that I want to be forgotten. And even if one of the two reviews that I mentioned steps stated, I didn't use Torger data, I didn't know who was him. But the actress was able to tell a story in which she let people understand the importance he had in her life, but he had also in the other history in general. So it's like a monument, it's like a memorial, it's like a memorial. This is why I use it to let people remind, and this is why I don't think it can be considered an archive from the spectator point of view.
Okay, I'm trying to understand how mind functions for the older rather than the spectator here, because the then is strong to the edge of remembering. You see that? Yeah, like you said, they have no environment. And also the context relates to how the ship. No, I'm just curious how that functions. I think
Thank you for this presentation. Another question for you. I don't know if you can but it seems that you really like some feedback to some kind of big things to careful. And I was wondering if you ever the kind of do kind of holiday population between performance and how they're doing or do you mean that the post I saw the original that something that doesn't make sense?
Thank you for the great question. I would say that in reflecting now on what I was doing 30 years ago as well, between 2000 and 2007, produced a lot of interviews that I have as audio and as transcripts, produced a lot of images, a lot of notes, a lot of observations on the differences of where these archives were, literally from someone pulling a box of photos out from under the bed to somebody requesting a YouTube bank archive, a bank vault to see because the images are so valuable. So I think right now when I look at my archive of those materials, I think that, I would like to do that actually, to now look more objectively at the kind of, crossovers, networks and, differences. So I feel like I'm keen to look back actually and really engage with those things. The thing that I'm working on right now, one of the things is a book with one of the other speakers, Sophie Delpo, who we are putting together a book which is on Geocam, but it's looking at how in the 50 years since she did the live work, how through the different decades, different theories, different readings of the work emerge that seem to expose mechanics, not just of what was happening in art, but what was happening politically or what was happening socially in different places. So I feel like it's a huge subject to think of really trying to pin down more having different different types of images, different types of interactions between the live and recorded. But that gives me a sort of framework which is a bit inverted, kind of looking at what was the impact of those records and how were they read over the different time. But certainly the thing I come away with, and the reason why I'm interested to participate in events like this is that there's something incredibly fascinating over around the subject of how two different outlooks merge into one, so a photograph or a video performance it is the work that was formed, it's the record of that, but it's influenced by what the person on the other side of the camera brings to that, not just in terms of the visual, but also in terms of sort of position. Yeah, I don't know that answers.
It was very interesting to me to see the paintings with it's certainly seeing together how charge the prayers sometimes, and I'm not sure
Let's say, as a short answer, the commercial stays incredibly fascinating to me in this respect. Not necessarily for kind of erotic reading, but for all of the things that commercial photography does to us, it's also around sort of selling, desire, ownership, that kind of thing. And I think that when I first was doing this research in Geocam, I would almost be in a talk like this. I started talking about the commercial. I'd almost be on the receiving end for conventional because it was very considered, very unrespectful of the artists of Geocam. But actually, I think she was incredibly savvy, and I think that she really knew what she wanted through those images. My recent collaborator, Stephanie Seifel, I think would really agree with you that there is a sort of erotic charge to some of those images, and an interest from her perspective, Stephanie's perspective, of how much Gina Powell's life as a queer woman in that time is not spoken about. Maybe it's starting to be spoken about now. But I think through collaborating with Stephanie, I can see it much more through her eyes of what's missing from discourse. I think you're right to suggest that.
We have time just for one last question because. But that was told.
I don't know if there's a development to the about the presentation before, but what I found fascinating about the conclusion is this carry on getting and process muscle and then it's great is how they stay sure actually so that talking about or not. You know, how they're fascinating. One really made sketches and the other one really uses it to make I love it about those bodies. So I think in that makes me think about the idea about the status of this work is. And for me, it's always a question of intent, where state and statements, you know, what's the status of those substance or works as works and when work is in that, and the intent of both in the artist and the photographer in that pairing. And I'd be curious to see where you would take that.
I think that in response to observe that both of the artists that you mentioned, Armando Library on Gina Powell. So I think that if one compares, say, to somebody like Marina Abramovich, who has continued to make work and has made pieces about biography and one can feel more sure about that as a question, you know, in that she's articulating how does the document and the relationships with other important not play a role in what's disseminated as the documentation. I think that I hope I'm understanding this right. I don't think I know what you mean. I think the thing that was incredibly fascinating for me was the range within live art on canvas of that bigger show that ranged from people like the good time Japanese artists in the 50s through to people like Manuel Bassett, who was in that show as well, and the very different position that the artist might take in trying to negate it, that anything happens other than someone held up the camera, you know, to for example, in case they had a real appreciation that the person on the other end of the camera, Rose Mayer, knew that when she is the camera, it would be the moment that the action becomes most provocative, because for the people around, they then see that it's not just about some sort of crazy person wondering about it, it's something that they are also caught up in. I don't know if that's the only direction you need, but I think it's again coming back to your question, there's a whole sort of spectrum within that. Where does the kind of authorship and desire of the artist pictures take on the values or reject the value of the person who recorded it? But I think that within that sort of range, I would say that Gina Powell is the most meticulous in knowing that she wants to range out. And that Francois Masson would say, I was also like but they worked together for 10 years, the actions took place over 10 years. And Francois said by the end of it, she was a bit like the same minded, so she was looking for anymore, she'd be looking for how everyone was going to trip over, who's going to sue, those kind of questions, as much as where would I be positioned to take the images. She talked on Gina Powell making these drawings for her, but her two daughters, Françoise and two daughters, also being present and colouring them in. So there are a lot of things happening outside of the frame of what's recorded. But when you see the content, when the images are brought together, I think there's something incredibly fascinating about how she found was through meditating a set of images that she wanted to have. She also wrote really well about that and published her own article.
Thank you, I'd like to thank for the question, but now we can stop here, switch to the next panel. We are late, but we are going to talk about break. We are going to cover break 10 minutes. Break 10 minutes, stop break. Okay. Thank you very much.